Welcome back to the Champagne on Ice podcast presented by the Field of 68. The regular season has officially come to an end for Illinois, and they will head into the postseason on a three-game winning streak, their first three-game winning streak since early January, after taking down number 18 Purdue in an electric regular season-ending game in Champaign on Friday night, and we'll now head on to the Big Ten tournament starting on Thursday. So we will talk about all of that and some NCAA tournament projections as well. It is officially March. It is officially bracket time, and Illinois has shown some real signs of life heading into the tournament. So that it's a lot better than it was before. We'll talk about that on this episode. I am Kyle Tausk, joined as always by Mike Farmer. And Mike, I know both of us were in the building on Friday night. That was as electric an atmosphere as there's been all year. And for once, Illinois actually won one of those marquee home games in an electric atmosphere. How are you feeling coming off that win?
I feel great about it, man. Going down to the wire, really good atmosphere. Purdue had the lead with just a couple minutes left, and I really thought Braden Smith was going to hit some of those shots. But on the flip side, KJ hit the big one. Illinois made their free throws. Braden Smith and the rest of Purdue kind of fell off in the last couple minutes. And Illinois came home with another win, 3 in a row. Just quite the turnaround from where we were just a couple weeks ago after that Duke loss in Madison Square Garden. So I'm feeling really good. I'm pretty encouraged by what we've seen recently.
Yeah, pretty incredible to end the season the way they have after it felt like close to a funeral after that Duke game for this team. Weren't sure if there was going to be any recovering from the worst loss in program history, but that's kind of the perfect encapsulation of what this regular season was for this team. Was it included 6 conference wins by 20 or more points, and also the worst loss in Illinois program history during this regular season. So pretty par for the course for what this team has been. But, hey, maybe they're starting to put it together here, a 3-game win streak heading into the Big Ten tournament. And let's just talk about that Purdue game, because I agree with you. I didn't feel great about it pretty much throughout. I mean, it just felt like early in the game, Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn were getting whatever they wanted. Purdue went on a nice run in the first half. Illinois closed the first half on a 7-0 run to cut it to 2. Before that, it looked like Purdue might have a double-digit lead going into halftime, and then Purdue got the lead back to 10 with, I think, about 11 minutes to go, maybe even 10 minutes to go in the second half, and Illinois just had nothing defensively. I mean, Kaufman-Renn got wherever he wanted. Tomislav Ivicic was in some foul trouble, so you had Ben Rickhouse one-on-one with Kaufman-Renn in the post. You had Braden Smith getting screened for, re-screened for, getting to his spots, getting to the rim, and Illinois went on a 2-for-20 stretch from 3 in the middle of the game, but closed the game on a 7-for-15 stretch from 3 in the second half. Came back, and Kasparas Jakiconis, for the first time in a couple months, hits a clutch go-ahead 3 with under a minute to go. Illinois gets the stop. Braden Smith misses a 3, and that place was absolutely rocking. The first time in a little bit that it feels like one of those huge home games Illinois actually won and not sent the crowd towards the exits early like they had against Tennessee and Michigan State and some of these other games. So a huge feel-good win, a great way to close the regular season against a good Purdue team that it felt like had outplayed Illinois probably more than they didn't in that game. But Illinois found a way at home to ride some late momentum and pick up a humongous momentum-changing win, because I felt like the result of that game was going to change so much about how I viewed this team heading into the postseason. Because if you had lost another home game and you had just kind of continued to be inconsistent, you had won the 2 in a row against Michigan and Iowa, and then you come back and you fall short again against a team you probably should beat at home again, it just feels like you'd enter the postseason saying, well, this is who this team is. It's just one night's this, one night's that, same inconsistencies. Why should I trust anything about this team heading into the postseason? By winning the game and actually building a true win streak and beating a quality opponent, the level of team Purdue that you'd probably see in a round of 32 type of matchup in the NCAA tournament, I feel like that totally flips the confidence level in this team maybe having a chance to go on a run. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, and I think especially, I guess, some of the aspects of the way they did it.
Yeah.
You got 7 points from your bench, and Ben Hummerkaus had all of those points. So you pretty much played six guys for the most part. Really didn't get much from Dre, nothing from Jake. Merez is still out. Hummerkaus' 7 points were huge, but it was like pretty much a five-man effort for most of the night. And then also the factor of coming from behind a little bit, even though it's on your home court, playing a team that's probably better than you, has maybe the Big Ten Player of the Year in Braden Smith, and you just kind of outperformed them when it was in crunch time in the final few minutes of the game when you needed to. So I thought it was really encouraging and just much needed, not only in a sense of like Illinois and the rest of their outlook this season, but like you just had to beat Purdue. You had to prove as a program again that you can win in these big home spots, which we've talked about at length this season in terms of Illinois not doing that. So there's that aspect. There's the way they did it. They were started off 3 for 3 from three, a really fun start. Energy in the arena was buzzing. And then you missed 10 or 11 in a row. And I like at that time, mid first half, late first half, I was saying I don't think the Illinois offense is even the biggest issue here because Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn were getting whatever they wanted, and that kind of continued in the second half for the most part until later in the game. But yeah, just like the Michigan win was huge, but that was another one of those wins where Illinois shoots, 45% from three. Probably not going to see that a ton the rest of the season unless there's a huge fluke game remaining for Illinois. But you just had to see Illinois continue to win to show they can win a game like this where, the shots weren't falling for most of the night. You're kind of getting picked apart by two of the better players in the league and maybe even the country and Smith and TKR. And still at the same time, Kylan Boswell comes up big, Trey White comes up big. Your veterans really start to show who they are, even though it is early March, but they've really found their groove. Kylan Boswell and Trey White have stepped up as leaders, and that's shown in the team's outputs and their statistical outputs too. They've been really good over this 3 game stretch. But yeah, just I think everybody stepped up when they needed to, and just a really fun win for the fans, good win for the program, and a confidence boosting win for the roster.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that encourages me the most heading into the postseason is the fact that the veteran guys on this team feel like they're playing their best basketball of the season. And you look at Trey White's last 4 games averaging 17 points a game on 67% shooting from the floor, 7 rebounds. Kylan Boswell's averaging 15 points a game over his last 4 games, 4.5 assists, and defensively, I think he's played really well. Wasn't great against Braden Smith, but it's hard to be. He's probably, like you said, the Big Ten Player of the Year, and I thought there were some possessions where he was disruptive, but he's playing great. And then Humrikaus is not going to blow you off the page with his numbers here recently, but I feel like he's found the role that fits him the best and is playing that role pretty well right now, where he's been moved to the bench and kind of out of emergency necessity with Merez out, he's had to play some backup 5 minutes off the bench, and I think he's at least held his own there, and I think those lineups have been pretty good for Illinois offensively because when you go that small, you can just totally space the floor, and he has knocked down shots here recently. I'm looking at his last 3 games, he's hit 7 of 14 from 3, 50%, so just hitting shots when you need them. Hit a couple of huge shots in the second half against Purdue, despite being quiet before that. And it feels like that's kind of every game for him here recently has been first half. It's like, oh boy, let's get Ben off the floor. He's not giving you much. And then the second half, he comes up huge. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I feel like he's at least gotten comfortable in that role. But yeah, the 2 starting veteran guys in Boswell and White have both been spectacular here recently. I just think you're going to need to lean on those guys in the tournament because both of them have been there before. Kylan Boswell's been to the tournament twice at Arizona. Trey White wasn't there last year with that dumpster fire Louisville team, but did play in a round of 64 game his freshman year as a starter for USC in that tournament. I believe that team lost to Michigan State maybe. But he has tournament experience too. So, I mean, I just think you got to lean on those guys. And as much as the freshmen are going to probably lead you to where you're ultimately going to end up, if you can get this type of level of play from Boswell and White and Humrikaus, I think you're going to need to have that and just lengthen this lineup. And I think that's the thing that stood out to me too about this game was it feels like a game the way it played out that Illinois from a month ago had no chance of winning. If this exact game script played out a month ago, I think Illinois would have had zero chance, because it felt like when they dried up from three, it very easily could have turned into one of their 6 of 34 nights from three, where it just, you can't find an answer. And when Purdue goes up 10 there, the team from a month ago probably sits in that deep drop, and Braden Smith hits 6 more mid-range jumpers on him. TKR continues to cook. Illinois made some late adjustments on TKR, finally sent a couple bodies at him late, threw a little stunt in there where Will Riley stripped him on the most crucial defensive possession of the game. Feels like that probably wasn't going to happen a month ago. It feels like offensively the response probably would have been, hey, KJ's going to try to bail us out. You didn't have as many options playing well offensively. It was probably going to be singularly maybe KJ or Tommy trying to do a little bit too much. You're probably going to continue to chuck threes, and it wasn't going to go well. In this game, I thought cutting was a huge part of it too, where Illinois really attacked some of those open gaps in Purdue's defense that have been there all year long, with Will Riley, with Trey White, with Kylan cutting to the rim, putting pressure on the rim, getting to the free throw line. The free throw discrepancy in this game was a huge reason for it. Just felt like the team from a month ago probably would have been stubborn, and a comeback like this probably wouldn't have happened. And to see Illinois find a way to battle back in this game, the way they handled the late game moments, I think, is going to be huge in March, because you're going to play in these close late game situations where you're going to need a late rally to steal a win if you want to make a deep run in the tournament. And Illinois had struggled in those moments in their last 5 or 6 leading up to this game, and finally got it done in one of those.
Yeah, no question. And I really do think it's going to sound cliche. And Underwood said in his press conference after the game, it is kind of cliche. But he mentioned that Kylan Boswell and Trey White, not just on the court, how they're playing, but off the court and in huddles and in locker rooms and in practice, they've stepped up as leaders. And it's like the togetherness, I forget exactly what he said, but just leading in timeouts, leading and making sure these young guys know what they're doing in late game situations like we saw against Purdue. It's so crucial. It's going to be so crucial in the Big Ten tournament, in the NCAA tournament. And Illinois really it didn't seem like they had that for a lot of that losing streak earlier in the year. KJ would get asked after the game, who's kind of leading you in huddles when guys are shooting free throws or timeouts are getting called? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. I just have to be better. I think that's kind of a part of why Illinois was losing. You can point to the 3-point shooting and whatever else you want to point to, but there has to be some sense of, this guy's a defined leader on this team. This guy's going to hold the team together when you're 5 for 23 from three, which Illinois was in this game. They were 5 for 23, finished 6 of 7 from three in the final 6 or 8 minutes of the game, I believe. And so, yeah, Illinois just proved that they can win in a game where at one point they didn't have the best chance. They were down 10 in the fourth quarter of the game pretty much. Wasn't shooting particularly well from three. Shots weren't falling for guys here and there. TKR and Smith were doing their thing, but they managed to stick with it, which they hadn't done in the past. They managed to make some adjustments defensively. The possession with Riley getting the steal, and then the possession with, I forget if it was CJ Cox or Harris that took one of the big shots late in the game because they sent the double at TKR. That's stuff that wins you games in March, and Illinois really hadn't done a whole lot of that adjusting and changing game plans during games earlier in the season. So I thought that was super encouraging. And then, yeah, at some point you just have to hit shots. KJ hit the huge shot. Helmerkaus had some really big shots. Will Riley was pretty consistent throughout the game, as well as Trey White and Kylan Boswell. So I just thought it was a really good team effort, both on the court in terms of offense stepping up late in the game, defense as well, but then just the leadership and, sticking with it, as we've been talking about, because that's exactly what you need when you're going to be playing probably Ohio State and some other quad one opportunities the rest of the season. Illinois is trending towards a 6 or 7 seed in the NCAA tournament, which means you're going to be playing probably a high major at-large team in the first round. Second round, we'll see after that. But yeah, you're just going to have to continue to prove that you can win games when things aren't going your way, when this guy's having a down night. And Illinois is really starting to do that with the win at Michigan, the win against Iowa, and a huge one against Purdue.
Will Riley right now feels like he's been the best player on this team for about a month in general when you total everything up. And this game I thought was one of the best overall and everything he brought in his entire career so far, because he just was so huge. He had the run to close the first half, which was basically all on his own. Illinois was close to being down double digits heading into halftime. They call a horrendous technical foul on Purdue, reminiscent of the R.J. Melendez one. I won't even try to argue with how horrible that call was. Illinois, of course, misses the free throw anyway, so I don't think it made a difference. It might have made a difference momentum-wise, though, because Illinois closed the first half on a 7-0 run right after it, and it was all Will Riley. He had a huge three going into the half. Just his instincts as a cutter and his ability to just find the open space. He is the best cutter on this team. He is the best off-ball mover on this team, making himself available. Him and Tomislav Ivisic have such a great connection right now in terms of Tommy finding him as a passer. When you stick Tommy either in the high post at the top of the key, feels like he just delivers it right where Riley is. Those two kind of have a nonverbal signal to each other of like, all right, here's what's going to happen. And those guys have a great connection right now. But also we're starting to see the shot making come back as well. He'd been struggling from three, goes 2 of 4 from three in this game. Also hits a couple really nice mid-range jumpers where he just elevates over a guy, knocks a shot down, creates a look for himself. That's the stuff that he dazzled in on tape as a prospect. And it felt like it. He really, honestly, his jump shot wasn't even in a great spot here recently, despite how well he had played. He had done a lot of his damage on the inside, which was a great step to see in his game. But you saw some of the shot making come back in this one as well. Also adds 4 assists to just 1 turnover. His decision making and his ability to pass just continues to jump off the screen, because it'd be very easy for a guy like him to just get tunnel vision and say, you know, I'm in a zone right now, shots are going to go up. It felt like that early in the season when he saw a couple shots go in, it'd be like, all right, it's Will Riley time. We're going to see the ball stick in his hands a ton here. But he found open guys. Purdue's very, Matt Painter is very strict about if a guy tries to back you down or a guy tries to go one-on-one, he wants to send 2 bodies. We saw that with Tomislav Ivisic. Anytime he tried to post up, Purdue would send 2 guys. When Will Riley tried to kind of get into that back-down spin type of move, Purdue would send 2 guys. Will Riley would move the ball. He'd find the open guy, had a nice skip pass to the corner, found a couple cutters himself. He just feels like he's in such a great spot right now, and he feels like that guy that can carry this team scoring wise and just have one of these types of games in March. Feels like he could be the March star of this team. I think KJ could still be that too, but I feel like Will Riley is trending in a phenomenal direction right now.
Oh, for sure. I just checked his numbers. I knew they were really good from a passing standpoint. 35 assists over his last 9 games, so just under 4 assists a game as a 6'7" freshman wing. Like, that's insane. And you have a primary ball handler in KJ and Boswell too and Tommy that are taking up a huge chunk of assists. So he's been doing a really good job from a passing standpoint. Really good cutter too, as you mentioned. The connection with him and Tommy is really fun to watch, like it was with KJ and Tommy earlier in the year. And then he hasn't even been shooting super well from 3, and he's still finding ways to score, whether it's getting downhill, running in transition, or finding a mid range on a little back down or whatever. So just a really smart player, and we've really seen his intelligence on display, I think, in the past couple weeks, especially the past 3 games during Illinois' win streak. But yeah, Illinois has found a second guy that I think they can go to late in games, because I don't really think you want Tommy taking your last shot. Boswell, maybe not, but like KJ, you do. And I think if KJ has an off night, Will Riley can be that secondary, first of all, ball handler, creator, and scorer for himself. I think he's a guy that can take over a game in March, as he kind of already has, like he just did against Purdue. A 7-0 run to end the half by himself that really changed the outlook of the game for Illinois. But yeah, Illinois is finding guys. I think with Will Riley emerging, with KJ that still has that 25-5 potential in any game he plays, even if he has a poor shooting night. I think with that, and with some veterans really starting to emerge too, and Kylan and Trey, who's combined for 32 points a game over their last 3 games, Illinois is looking really good. And the shots have really started to fall from deep too, shooting, I think, just around 35% over the last 3 games compared to like 30 or 31% on the year before that. So I think things are coming together at a really good time. You throw in Merez coming back, hopefully, during the Big Ten tournament. And I think actually, Illinois actually looks really scary compared to how they looked just a couple weeks ago when I personally thought the season was completely dead. I think it's a testament to Brad Underwood and the culture of this program and how guys have really decided we're not going to throw in the towel. I'm going to step up this game. This guy's going to step up here late in the game, and we're going to will the team and the program to get some huge wins here late in the season. But yeah, as you said, going back to Will Riley, uh, 12 points a game on the year, 4 rebounds, and he's now averaging 4 assists over the last 9 games. That's exactly what we kind of expected coming into the year. Had that little stretch of pretty poor play during the middle part of the season, but he said he forgot about that. He's completely changed the way he's playing. He's finding spots. He's not just sitting in the corner and shooting threes. He's getting downhill as we called for earlier in the year. And he's really just doing the things we saw him do in high school, and he's added to that with the passing and the cutting and all that stuff. So it's really made him into a dangerous threat for this team. And one more thing, I just love seeing him start. I like Hummerkaus on the bench. Hummerkaus, as you said, has shot 7 for 14 in the 3 games he's been on the bench during Illinois' win streak. And yeah, he kind of struggles in the first half, but he comes in and all he needs is one shot, and he'll get going if he makes that shot. And then Will Riley just gives you, I think, a lot of versatility in that starting lineup, gives you another ball handler, gives you a guy that can get instant buckets as the game gets going. So I think I'm just happy with what Illinois is doing right now from on the court play to off the court play and making adjustments in the starting lineup and position changes and all that stuff. So I'm excited about Illinois' outlook in March, which I didn't think I'd say a couple weeks ago.
Feels like Brad Underwood's found his March rotation here. You can kind of see it coming together, and that happens every year where minutes fluctuate, roles fluctuate, lineups change at some point, and then once you get to those last few games of the season into the tournament, it feels like a clearer picture is put together of what the rotation is going to look like, and it feels like the five that we've seen start here recently are going to be the guys that Brad rides with as heavy as he can while mixing in Benham Rickhouse and Merez Johnson, assuming Merez Johnson can come back. We'll talk about that in a minute. And maybe a little bit of Dre, a little bit of Jake Davis. I do think Dre still is a guy that could come in and give a big spark in a tournament game. I just think he's probably a guy who needs to show you something pretty early in his stint to stay on the floor. But it feels like, you're going to roll with KJ. You're going to roll with Will heavy minutes. Tommy's going to play as much as he can while mixing in a little bit. And when Merez comes back, I think Tommy won't have to be a 34, 35-minute guy. In this game, he couldn't be because he was in foul trouble. But I think you'll be able to rotate those guys a little bit more and then slide Ben back to more of his natural position as a 4. But yeah, it feels like, Boswell's going to play a ton. I think Trey White has fully worked himself back in. I mean, talk about a storyline of this season. Trey White going from DNPs to, what did he play, 37 minutes in this game or something like that? Close to that. 35 minutes in this game, 20 points, 9 rebounds, 4-game stretch to close the regular season, 17-7 on 67% shooting and 60% from 3 for a guy who was shooting like 15% from 3 before that. Just remarkable, and a huge credit to him, a guy that easily could have just called it in on the season, having been pissed off and said, look, I'm out of the rotation for whatever reason. I got sick. Now I got guys that are taking my spot. I'm going to mentally check out. No, he came back when he got his opportunity, starting with that Wisconsin game when Illinois had more illnesses. He has ran with it, and he is playing like one of the best players on this team right now. And that is a huge credit to him for being able to do that. And he's going to be really important for this team. But just going back to the original point, feels like this is the rotation. It's probably going to be primarily those 7 if Merez is back. With this starting 5, which I agree with you, I think it's perfect. I think it works well together. I think it's allowed Illinois to get off to much better starts in games, which was a problem at one point, because I think Will Riley needs to be starting a game for you to get off to the best start possible, because he's one of your most dynamic options. And I think the way that Kylan and Trey have solidified themselves to say, hey, we're going to be hard to take off the floor right now. You're going to need us and our experience and what we bring. And both those guys have defended really well recently. I think it's all coming together pretty perfectly to make a nice little seven-man rotation with maybe a little bit of Jake Davis and Dre mixed in. I think those guys could both each give you a big spark in a game, but I think those guys will probably be a little bit more here and there as opposed to big parts of the rotation. Do you think this is the right way to go for Brad Underwood? Do you think this is kind of perfectly fallen into place?
Yeah, I do. And I think just based on what we've seen the past three games, and it's coincided with an actual winning streak, I think it's what we're going to see the rest of the year, apart from obviously Morez coming back, which I think is actually a super interesting uh, piece of the puzzle for the remainder of Illinois season. Because I forgot to mention earlier, in terms of Illinois finding ways to win games when things aren't going right, they're still not rebounding super well. Like they had five offensive rebounds in this win against Purdue. You add Morez back into that. Obviously, some things are going to change in terms of spacing, and maybe three-point shooting takes a little bit of a hit when he's out there. But like you add back Illinois' ability to be one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country and rebounding teams in the country. I think that makes them even scarier. I think, if Tommy goes down with foul trouble or something, Illinois has obviously some more front court depth, some defense too. That we saw Illinois struggle a lot with TKR and some other guys the past couple weeks with Morez down. You bring Morez back, like you have just a brick wall in the paint defensively. You have a phenomenal rebounder, a guy that can get out and fly in transition, go for alley-oops and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be a very interesting part of the puzzle for Illinois as they take on most likely, I think Maryland or Michigan. If I think we're probably going to play Ohio State.
Michigan's getting destroyed by
Oh,
Michigan
okay.
State as we record this, so it's going to be Maryland as the 2 seed.
If you get to that Friday game in the Big Ten tournament, I think Morez Johnson Jr. is a pretty important piece there. So yeah, I think I like shrinking the rotation, especially in March, as you lean on veterans, you lean on guys that have kind of done it all year. So I think it's smart to shrink down a little bit. I don't know if you really want Jake Davis and still an inexperienced Dre picking up a lot of minutes in huge games. Although they can play spot minutes and provide a spark here or there. But yeah, I think you shrink down to six or seven if Morez really does come back. It's a big lineup still. You have Hummerkaus, Tommy, Will, and Morez who are all above 6'7", 6'8". That's a huge lineup. And then obviously Boswell, Trey, and KJ have all had their moments, especially Boswell and Trey recently. And I think you just lean on that veteran leadership. And I don't know. I think Illinois is in a very good position right here, which, as I said, did not see coming a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so the latest update on Morez, Brad said on Friday that he has his cast off. He's been able to do some conditioning stuff. Still has not been able to practice at all or really even shoot at all because they don't want to put him in any situation where the risk is in jeopardy. But he is going to get another scan on the wrist, he said soon, as of Friday, that will determine whether he can return to contact type of stuff and full practice and really be cleared to return. And then John Rothstein, I believe, was that maybe yesterday that he had tweeted that Brad Underwood told him that they will have an answer on Morez Johnson's availability for the Big Ten tournament on Monday, which is when this episode will be released Monday morning. We're recording it on Sunday, March 9th. So you'll probably have some type of update on Morez Johnson shortly before or after listening to this. But it sounds pretty promising based on the way Brad has spoken, based on the fact that he's gotten the cast off, based on the fact that he is at least starting to get his feet back under him conditioning wise, doing some running stuff. Brad said he'd been doing some stuff in the pool. Sounds pretty promising to get him back for Thursday's game against what looks to probably be Ohio State. We'll talk Big Ten tournament in a minute, but and all the matchups. But that's promising because even like as much as his presence is going to help in the Big Ten tournament, I think it's just really important to get him back on the floor in games that don't mean as much so that he can really be full go, full back, in rhythm, with game action back under his feet for the NCAA tournament, because that's when you're going to really need him is the NCAA tournament, like you said, for everything, for offensive rebounding purposes, for toughness, for defense, which Illinois has struggled with in terms of just containing big guys in like a Trey Kaufman-Wren type of matchup, a Julian Reese type of matchup, that Maryland front court that Illinois could see on Friday. Morez is going to be huge in that, just some real rim protection, some athleticism, some switchability. I think you get him back in practice and you get him working on maybe some ball screen coverage stuff, some of the soft hedging that Illinois has done in ball screen. I think he'd be outstanding at that because of his athleticism and recovery time to maybe even be a little bit more aggressive and throw even a little deeper wrinkle into some of Illinois' ball screen stuff. So I think he'll be a hugely important piece. My guess is that he'll come off the bench here in the postseason because I don't think Brad is going to mess with this lineup that's worked, but I think he's going to play some really important minutes for this team. I still think you'll see Tommy and him play together, especially if you are going to go against a Twin Towers front court like a Maryland or like a Purdue. And I think getting him back on top of everything that Illinois has done without him here to close the regular season should give people some real optimism that, hey, this team really could be the dangerous team that we thought here. And I certainly think if Perez comes back and looks like his old self in the Big Ten tournament, that's an Illinois team that definitely is going to be fully equipped to do anything they possibly can in the NCAA tournament.
For sure. It just adds a whole new wrinkle to what Illinois has been successful with the past 3 games, especially. Yeah, I don't think they mess with the starting lineup unless they are playing a team that you desperately need to have two 6'10" plus guys in the starting lineup against, like a Maryland. I think it's just like if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think Trey White and Will Riley have done really well in what they've been asked to do. Obviously, you had issues with Hummerkaus being the 5 and having to guard TKR or wherever else you want to talk about. That's going to have present some issues for Illinois. But with Perez back, I think he could be the guy that slots in there and obviously bears a load defensively. And then offensively, I don't know if you can expect a whole lot with his touch coming back. It's going to be probably an issue with his wrist and obviously not having shot or worked out a ton. So I don't think you need to ask too much of him offensively, but he does provide the obviously offensive rebounding and just a low post presence that Tommy at times doesn't really provide for Illinois. He's more of a guy that he's at his best sometimes when he's at the top of the key, distributing or picking and popping threes or whatever.
Get some of that high-low stuff back involved with those two working together.
I missed that. But yeah, Illinois is just in a good spot right now, man. And I think you add Perez back, and that's a team that gets some of that rebounding mojo back, gets even more toughness. I think Illinois played a pretty tough game against Purdue in terms of just gritting it out and actually game came down to the wire, and they showed up pretty much. And I think Perez will help with that a ton too. And just having it's cool to have your teammate come back and rejoin the rotation. You bring some stuff back that you missed when he was out. And I think, yeah, Illinois is a team you probably don't want to see right now, especially just depending on matchups, depending on who they're playing and if they can actually knock down shots in that game. But yeah, Illinois, it's quite a turnaround for the season.
I think the best part about it all is that I think Illinois has solidified the fact that they will not be on the 8-9 line of the NCAA tournament, which is what you had to avoid to really feel like you could make a run, because you don't want to run into Duke or Auburn or Houston or even Florida in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. I think these last 2 wins at Michigan versus Purdue, even if Illinois were to lose on Thursday, I think they would be on the 7 line of the NCAA tournament. Actually, Joe Lunardi has them on the 6 line after that Purdue win, which I think would be the sweet spot of seeding for Illinois. The 6 seed in the NCAA tournament, meaning you would play one of these garbage bubble teams, probably, this bubble is so bad. You'd play one of these 11 seeds from Dayton that sneaks into the tournament that I think you should be able to beat. And then you'd get a 3 seed, which I think there is kind of a drop-off between those top 1 and 2 seeds and the 3 seeds to get to a second weekend. You wouldn't see a 1 until the Elite 8. Obviously, that's getting way ahead of things, but I think that's kind of the sweet spot, and Illinois has made that a real possibility now. And just getting off that 8 seed line, I think, is absolutely huge heading into the NCAA tournament. Bracket Matrix right now has them as the second highest 7 seed. So there's still going to be a lot to play out, a lot of opportunity in Indy. But I think even a loss Thursday should keep Illinois off the 8 seed line, which is absolutely huge for this team's chances of at least even just getting to a second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Well, let's talk about the Big Ten tournament. Now, we are recording this at about 12:45 Central Time on Sunday, which means Michigan and Michigan State, as well as Iowa and Nebraska, are still playing right now, so we don't know the bracket in full. Michigan State up 14 on Michigan with 10 minutes left as I speak right now. They'll probably get that one done, which means that Maryland will be the 2 seed, Michigan will be the 3 seed, and then Iowa-Nebraska is a play-in game for the Big Ten tournament. The winner of that game gets into the Big Ten tournament. The loser misses the Big Ten tournament. Iowa currently leads that game by 2 early in the second half. So if Iowa were to win that game, Iowa would be the 15 seed, the last seed into the Big Ten tournament, playing Ohio State, the 10 seed, on Wednesday. The winner of that game then plays Illinois. If Nebraska wins that game, Nebraska rises all the way up to the 12. USC is the 15 seed. So Illinois will be playing the winner of either Ohio State, Iowa, or Ohio State, USC. I think Ohio State will beat either of those teams. I think it'll be Illinois, Ohio State on Thursday at 5:30. And Ohio State might be playing for their tournament lives in that game. They lost at Indiana on Saturday. They are right squarely on the bubble right now. They probably need to beat Illinois to get into the tournament, which is a very dangerous opponent to be playing in the Big Ten tournament, one that is desperate and playing for their tournament lives. Illinois, Ohio State obviously played once this year. Illinois beat them in Champaign, came back from down double digits in the second half in the midst of some of their struggles and injuries and illnesses. But that's probably going to be the matchup. Winner of that game would then play Maryland. Michigan would be on the same side of the bracket with Purdue, as well as the 3 and 6 seed. So early thoughts on kind of how that lays out for Illinois in Indy next week.
I don't mind it. Kind of deja vu from last year in terms of, obviously it was Friday, but Illinois playing an Ohio State team that was needed to go on a run to solidify themselves in the tournament. Illinois was down double digits in that game, kind of had some rough help, I can't lie, and then ended up winning that one, winning 2 more, and obviously making it all the way to the Elite Eight after winning the Big Ten tournament. But yeah, Ohio State, Illinois beat them earlier in the year, obviously. Ohio State hasn't really been tested a ton. I'm looking at their schedule right now. The past couple weeks, they played UCLA and a road game at Indiana that have kind of been their best competition besides a Michigan home game. Lost all 3 of those. Their only wins since mid-February have been a road win at USC a couple weeks ago, and then a 2 OT 116 to 114 win over Nebraska the other day. So a team that's not really hot right now, a team that, as you said, is going to be playing for their tournament lives. I think Illinois matches up pretty well. Obviously, the last game they played was very interesting in the fact that Ohio State solely relied on mid-range jumpers, and that obviously didn't work out for them. John Mobley took like 20 shots in that game in the second half. Illinois came out and won that one. And I like Illinois' potential matchup with them. I think they have a Bruce Thornton stopper in Kylan Boswell. I think Devin Royal kind of cooked them last time out. I think Trey White's a decent matchup for that. I think you could even put Merez on him potentially if Merez is back and healthy for this potential game. But yeah, I like Illinois. I like the way Illinois is playing. I don't love the way Ohio State's playing as of Sunday, March 9th. So I'm optimistic about it if that is indeed the matchup. This feels weird. Like the bracket's not even set. This game hasn't even happened yet. So I don't know. I like this potential matchup if this is indeed the matchup. But yeah, I like Illinois' chances against a lot of teams right now, especially in the Big Ten. I just love the way they're playing. The shooting's been a lot better. The rebounding's fallen off, but with a potential Merez return to the lineup, I think that improves. And I just like the way Illinois has toughed out some games, and the leaders have shown up, especially the veterans and Boswell and White. So I'm pretty optimistic about Illinois' chances against a lot of teams.
Yeah, I like the matchup against Ohio State. I do get worried just about an Illinois team that probably has their sights more set on the NCAA tournament at this point than anything, versus an Ohio State team that has to have the game. Now, it doesn't always play out that way. Like you said, Ohio State had to have the game last year against Illinois, didn't get it. Illinois was able to hold them off. Now, they gave Illinois quite the test and were right in that game down the stretch. But that's just a dangerous spot to be motivation-wise. In terms of on the floor, though, I agree with you. I think Illinois should be able to dominate the glass against Ohio State if you get Merez back. The front court mismatch is huge. Ohio State's front court really poor. Devin Royal has played really well here, but even he's not. He's more of a skilled, perimeter-oriented kind of wing-ish type front court piece, and he did have a huge game here in Champaign. Merez couldn't really handle him in that game when Illinois was playing the two big lineup, but Illinois did dominate the paint, dominated the glass in that game. I think that's something that you can do in this one as well. I want to see a team that attacks, and a big part of that second half comeback when they came to Champaign was Illinois, I think, only took 6 threes the entire second half. That was kind of the first time all year long that Illinois pivoted away from shooting 35 threes in a game, was that second half against Ohio State when they pounded the paint. Boswell had a big second half, KJ and the bigs with Tommy and Merez. I think that needs to be the formula here, and you should be able to have advantages there. And then, Ohio State fell into the Illinois defense trap of taking like 34 mid-range shots and made like 2 of them. In that game, it was the most insane shot chart ever. John Mobley was like 1 of 95 from the mid-range in that one. So we'll see if Ohio State adjusts. I'd imagine they probably do this time. But that backcourt is the one thing that scares you. Thornton's outstanding. Mobley can really heat up. So that'll be something that Illinois Boswell's going to have to play well defensively. Trey White, Kasparis, those guys are going to have to guard. But I think it sets up pretty well there. I think Illinois wins that game. As desperate as Ohio State's going to be, I think Illinois wins on Thursday. Maryland is where I get worried. Merez coming back is huge. When Maryland came to Champaign and dominated Illinois on their home floor, Tommy was out, so it was only Merez in the front court. Maryland had 62 points in the paint. So I think if you can get Merez back, now again, it's not confirmed that Merez will be back. It just sounds promising as we record this that he would be. If you have him back, I think you match up a lot better with Maryland. But I think this Maryland team's really good. I think this is a team that is pretty dangerous. Their starting 5 is probably one of the best in the Big Ten. When you look at that, they don't have much depth, but they got Jacoby Gillespie, who is an explosive guard who can get going, also a pretty good table setter. You've got 2 guys, really good shooters, in Rodney Rice and Selton Miguel on the wings, and then you got that front court with Derek Queen playing outstanding basketball right now, looking like a lottery pick, potential all Big Ten first-team guy, maybe even the freshman of the year in the Big Ten with the way he's played down the stretch, and then Julian Reese, who's an Illinois killer. When Julian Reese sees Illinois across from him, he turns into one of the best bigs in the country, it feels like. So that's the matchup that will very much intrigue me, and I do really like this Maryland team. But again, I think Illinois can beat anybody in this tournament. I think Illinois could win this dang tournament, but we'll see what happens here. We'll see how Illinois approaches it too, in terms of, how motivated they are. There's been years in the past, I think last year in finishing second in the regular season, and especially that Io Kofi year when they got robbed by Kevin Warren of the Big Ten title, I think there was a lot of motivation for Illinois to win the Big Ten tournament. This year, I wonder about that. And not to say that Illinois is not going to go out there and want to win every game, but in terms of like how dead set Illinois is going to be on winning this thing, I feel like the NCAA tournament is going to be at the front of mind for Illinois, and trying to get as much rest and as healthy as possible. Of course, Brad Underwood mentioned in the post game against Purdue, Kasparis is sick now, and there's a couple more sicknesses. Good, please, dear God, don't start with that again. So we'll just see on that front from Illinois' perspective. But I would circle that Illinois-Maryland matchup of like, if Illinois can get past that, I think they can go win this whole thing. But that matchup does scare me a little bit, because I think this Maryland team is really good.
For sure. I would like getting a second crack at them. If, I don't love the talk about, I understand why it happens. You have your sights set on the NCAA tournament. You still want to get healthy. You want to make sure Merez is back and playing at his best. But I feel like you want to win the Big Ten tournament. Sure. Even, I'm just saying, I don't love the attitude of we're going to focus on the NCAA tournament, kind of blow off the Big Ten tournament this year. I don't love that. I doubt that's even the case, but I get what you're saying completely. Yeah, a potential Maryland rematch would be definitely pretty scary. That's a team that has kind of run through the Big Ten, honestly, apart from a couple losses, like the buzzer beater from Trey Holloman against MSU. Just a scary lineup with the two bigs and Queen and Reese, and then as you said, the backcourt that's pretty dynamic and can score in a lot of ways. Um, yeah, I would like to get a second crack at them though. I think with a healthy Merez back, with Tommy back, that's just something they didn't see in that first matchup in Champaign. They also didn't see a Trey White like we're seeing right now. They didn't see a Kylan Boswell like we're seeing right now. I think all those things kind of compiled, and Illinois has a chance to potentially make some changes if this matchup happens again in terms of obviously low post defense and fix all the stuff that went wrong in the first time around. I would like to see that. I think that's a huge test for Illinois going into the NCAA tournament, which I guess is kind of what we've been waiting for the entire year. I think that's a test where if Illinois somehow pulls that game out, I think the sky's really the limit. I think the sky's been the limit at times this year in terms of if Illinois hits their threes, they can beat anybody. But I think if you go and you put the hammer down and beat a really good Maryland team that has probably going to go to a Sweet 16, maybe Elite Eight in the actual tournament, if you come out and beat that team at the Big Ten tournament and then do whatever else after that in the Big Ten tournament in the semifinals and past that, I mean, I would be incredibly bought in on Illinois if they managed to put down a two big lineup of Reese and Queen that have been playing phenomenally, like you just said. I mean, the narrative of the season would have completely flipped from literally 2 or 3 weeks ago in Madison Square Garden. I think it would obviously depend on how they won it and if that's the game where they shoot 55% from three and destroy a team just because shot variance or whatever. I think that's a different story. But if Illinois somehow goes out and wins that game after beating OSU, after beating Purdue and Michigan, a lot of hungry teams that are, playing for their lives or playing for seeding, I think Illinois is a team that could actually not have to rely on shooting 33% from three. And I think they could prove that they can just go out and beat anybody at any given time. So yeah, that's a lot of me hyping up a team for a potential game that hasn't even happened, might not even happen. But I like the way Illinois is playing right now. It's a huge switch up from where they were just a couple days ago, honestly. And yeah, I'm just encouraged about Illinois' chances in a lot of these games.
Yeah, you look at, if you were to beat Maryland there, then you'd get the winner of probably Purdue and Michigan. I wouldn't love seeing Purdue again based on how easily and effortless they scored for a lot of that game here in Champaign. However, I would like getting another crack at them with Merez Johnson to battle with TKR because I think that's something that Illinois was really missing in that game with how easy things were for him to throw Merez as a body on him. If you were to get him back, I think that would help Illinois a lot. But I definitely wouldn't love the idea of seeing Purdue in that semifinal game. I would love the idea. Again, this is getting way ahead. Illinois would have to win a lot of tough games to get there. But a Michigan State-Illinois Part 3 on Sunday to win the Big Ten championship, I would sign me up for that. I would love that. That would be awesome. That's something that would really excite me. As much as Michigan State has kind of owned Illinois this year. If Illinois at that point enters that game, now Michigan State's playing incredible basketball too, but two teams that have won a ton of games in a row, playing outstanding basketball, two heated high-level games in the regular season, playing for the Big Ten championship on Sunday, that would be awesome stuff. So I'm secretly hoping for that matchup to happen. But Michigan State would have to beat the winner of Indiana-Oregon, the 8-9 game, then UCLA is the 4 seed, Wisconsin is the 5 seed on that side, and Michigan State just looks like a freight train right now, which I just did not see coming, but that could be a fun matchup too. But yeah, I think really anything can happen in this Big Ten tournament. I haven't studied this bracket enough yet, and of course it's still not finalized completely. Most of the seeds are, but not the 15, not the 12, not the 2 yet, but I think a lot can happen here. I could see Illinois losing to Ohio State in the first game. I could see Illinois winning this tournament. I think Illinois could do a lot of different things. That's kind of the story of this season, is that statement right there, I think. But I definitely like where Illinois is at coming into this. You get Merez back and you win a couple games here. I think if you win that first game and then you beat Maryland and just get to the semifinal, I think you're a 6 seed minimum in the NCAA tournament. Maybe if you even won the thing, you could get all the way back up to a 5, which I'm not even sure if I'd want to do that because I think a 6 seed's a better spot to be in this tournament. But that would be huge for NCAA seeding as well. So I think it's going to be a fun week. Do you want to give like a little bracket prediction here while we, I know it's not fully finalized, but all the top seeds are basically. You want to kind of end it with a quick Big Ten tournament bracket projection?
Yeah, why not? I'll say I don't know who OSU plays, but I say they beat whether it's what USC or Iowa, I think you said.
Yeah.
I think they take care of that. I think Illinois beats Ohio State. I like the way they match up. I think Boswell and whatever else, whatever other backcourt piece you want to pick out, can contain Thornton and Mobley and those guys. I think Royal won't have as good of a game in this game. So I think they take care of OSU in this potential game. And then after that, as much as I said I like Illinois' chances against a lot of teams, I can't really pick them to beat Maryland right now. I think even though they've been playing so well and the three-point shooting has turned up a notch, and hopefully the rebounding would be improved by then. Hopefully, you've figured out the rotation fully with Merez back. I don't love Illinois' chances in that game, even though I do want to see that game because I think I want to keep playing good teams ahead of the final goal, which is winning a couple games in the big dance. So I think that game would be really fun, and I think it would kind of continue to show who Illinois is. I'm not picking them to win that game. I think they bow out on Friday, which is honestly fine by me. I know I just made a point about wanting to win the Big Ten tournament, but you're running into a really good Maryland team potentially. So I think that caps them out at maybe the last 6 seed, maybe the first 7 seed, which is that's a fine spot to be in, because
Yeah.
that OSU game would be probably a quad 2 win. The USC loss
OSU is going to be quad one. They're a
quad
metric
one.
starling. Yeah, they're I
Okay.
think 30 something in the net. You
Oh,
need to be top 50 on a neutral, so you'd get a quad one win.
yeah, so that would be huge. I think 7 seed, 6 seed, you would have won 4 in a row after losing to Maryland, or before losing to Maryland, excuse me. Leaves you in a pretty good spot for the NCAA tournament, playing a lower tier high major team as a 10 seed potentially, and then one of the 2 seeds. If you get to that game, you're going to have to beat an Alabama, a Tennessee, whoever else there is, a Texas A&M or somebody, depending on what happens in this next week. I don't love Illinois' chances, but this team can, if they have a hot shooting night, if Will Riley goes off, if KJ has one of his games, this is a team that can really beat anybody on any given night, and they've kind of shown that the past couple weeks. So it's going to be a really interesting next couple weeks in March with the Big Ten tournament, with the NCAA tournament, and Illinois getting hot at the right time.
Yeah, going up against those teams would be a lot easier than Duke, Auburn, Florida, or
Oh
Houston.
yeah.
It's just it's so huge that Illinois is almost certainly, barring a bunch of teams behind them, like winning their conference tournament on the 8 line or whatever, almost certainly will not be an 8 seed, will be at least a 7 seed, which is just in this year's bracket, huge, absolutely huge. And yeah, I think they can pretty easily get to a 6 now, which I think would be even better. That's kind of the perfect seed to me to be at if you're not obviously one of the top 3 or 4 seeds. I don't know. I think Illinois beats Ohio State. That Illinois Maryland game, I think that'll be a heck of a game. I share your thoughts about. I just really like this Maryland team and their build for a postseason setting. I think they're a dangerous team here in the Big Ten, and I do think those 2 bigs are a big problem, even if Illinois gets fully healthy. I think those 2 guys on their own can mitigate some of the rebounding dominance that Illinois can have on a team, and they've got shooting, they've got a heck of a guard. That's going to be a big time matchup. I'll take Illinois to win 2 games in the Big Ten tournament. I think they beat Maryland. I think they get their revenge on Maryland with the assumption that Merez is healthy. I think Purdue beats Michigan, who just looks like they're free falling, and then I think Purdue takes down Illinois in the semifinal. That's where I'll land here. I think Illinois gets 2 and then falls to Purdue on Saturday, and then that sets up, in my opinion, in my first initial glance at this bracket, without having done any thinking about it at all, Michigan State Purdue would be what I would chalk up as Sunday's championship game. I just think Purdue, even though they haven't played great here recently, they got 2 of, maybe the two best players in the entire Big Ten. I mean, with Braden Smith and TKR, I know some of the supporting cast can be up and down. Their defense hasn't been great. But you enter a tournament setting and you got the two best players on the floor almost every game, maybe unless you play Tanji in Wisconsin. I think that does a whole lot for you. I think Braden Smith, with his experience in these big games, is just going to be tough to hold down. So I wouldn't love running into Purdue again based on how much they kind of cooked Illinois for a lot of that game. And Illinois made some shots to win that, but Purdue even kept Illinois off the glass, and that's been a struggle for them. So that's a good sign. I'll take Purdue over Illinois, but I think this can go a lot of different ways. And I'm excited. It's March now. It is officially March. It's conference tourney week followed by NCAA tournament week. Illinois, yet again, is relevant in these tournaments, which wasn't the case for about a decade straight, and Brad Underwood has them with excitement heading into these tournaments every single year. And I think this year, the way that Illinois has trended heading into both of these tournaments is very exciting, because I think there are endless possibilities for what this team can do if you get the type of performance that you've got in the last three games. So I am fired up for it, and we will be here along the way to break it all down. Any last thoughts from you before we close it out?
I just wanted to say, with all this bracket talk, Friday of the Big Ten tournament might be that could be the most entertaining day of college basketball, because you potentially Illinois, Maryland, Purdue, Michigan. It would be Michigan State versus like Oregon or something, and then
Indiana team playing really well right now. Yeah,
I mean, that would be amazing. And then Wisconsin against UCLA, maybe. That is four high quality game, or not even high quality, like top 20, top 30 matchups, all those teams. That would be maybe the most fun day of Big Ten basketball in recent memory. And then after that would be awesome too. But yeah, Illinois is just playing really well, and 6 20-win seasons in a row from Brad Underwood. That's a guy that probably shouldn't be fired, even though Twitter heads want him fired. Tyler Underwood, back-to-back top 15 offenses, had top 3 offense in the country last year, probably shouldn't be fired. But hey, Illinois is playing well. Everybody's happy. We're feeling good. Let's have some fun at the Big Ten tournament.
Absolutely. And I think Brad Underwood deserves a lot of credit for the way that this team has bounced back after losing by 43 points at Madison Square Garden, and some of the changes we've seen, the lineup changes we've seen. The guy actually, believe it or not, can adjust and can coach a college team at a high level. And I think the way that he's brought this team back from the dead. Now, the players deserve the most credit of anybody for being able to mentally respond from that. But I think this coaching staff has done a nice job here getting this team to a good place heading into the postseason, and it is going to be very fun. We will probably be back on Selection Sunday or Monday morning. We'll probably drop an episode sometime early in the week next week, just since it's game after game after game so close to each other in the Big Ten tournament. We probably won't, go day by day. We'll probably just wait till that thing ends and give some reaction there. We will be, for as long as Illinois lasts in the NCAA tournament, we will have an episode out after every game. But for the Big Ten tournament, we will probably be back afterwards to both talk about how Illinois performed in the Big Ten tournament and also have a bracket in front of us to break down Illinois' NCAA tournament path. So that'll be the most fun episode of the entire season coming up next. So make sure you follow along with us at Champagne on Ice on X. Subscribe to the Field of 68 Podcast Network YouTube channel. Find us wherever else you get your podcasts. Hope everybody enjoys the heck out of conference tournament week. Let's hope Illinois makes a nice long run here in Indianapolis, and we will be back afterwards to break it all down right here.